going out to a whole bunch of other social media platforms. And this is another broadcast here for what is called Moth Night, which is an event held every year, slightly different times every year, where we try to engage the public, tell them about moths, help them, show them things that are flying around and that can be seen in their local area. And in a normal year, I'd have done last a public event, had people visiting, people spending time with me here looking for moths. That was practical because of rules about social distancing, rules about keeping apart from one another, rules being. So we're going to attempt something else instead. Two types on here this year, but we showed how the traps worked and how we took them down and so on. So we will hopefully be able to, you can view them if you want to know what we did, but basically we ran some surveys last night and we looked for some moths. What I'm going to do is I'm now going to show a few of them on up. Connect to the computer. And once that appears, I will make that the primary thing. And what we'll do is we'll put the moths underneath that screen and have a look at them and talk about what they are whilst we're on there. Again, I'm getting some issues about maybe pixelated, essentially on top of the router, but it is a 4G router rather than a wired one, so it may just be having capacity issues. But we will give it a go. We will see what we can find, and with any luck, there'll at least be some sense of what's going on. So I had a variety of traps out last night. And I will place the moth I'm looking at. And come on. Underneath. Okay, let's try and turn this thing over so it's sitting the right way around. And then I will just go to what I'm looking at. It's really hard to do under it. Right, so here's the first of our moths. I will try and focus the camera on that. And this species, dark arches, Apamina monoglypha, scientific name. It's a very common species, quite a large noctuid. Noctuids being one of the groups of moths. And several of these came to the light traps last night, so that was rather nice. So that was the or dark arches, Apamina monoglypha, a species that these numbers of we get quite reasonable. That's all there. What I will do is I will transfer that. The next moth was a little active, so we're going to have to look at it just in a tube, I'm afraid. This is a species called willow. Again, it's a pretty common species. It feeds on a wide variety of different food plants. It can be a species that comes from the continent, but it does breed locally. Comes in continent as well. I'll put its name up so people see it, but it's pale mottled willow or Caradrina clavipalpis. It's a relatively common species again, well, I mean very common species. Has a very pale hindwing to it, but is again, a relatively common species and one that we get quite a lot of. So we'll move on and see if I've got anything else to look to. A couple of examples of the next species. So we will start with this one, which I will just hold until I can turn the light off. Let's see if that assists. So this moth, different species. This is called a moth riband wave. And riband, the word means pretty much the same as riband, having a ribbon on it, and refers to dark species. And this is what we would call the typical form of the riband wave, is what we would call, which has this dark bar across it. However, there's another form of the same species, which if it'll settle still, I will put similarly in front of the camera. So this is the same, this is also a riband wave, but it hasn't got a central bar, and this is referred to, this one you can see it has got that dark centers through. It's actually more common than the typical form, which sounds counterintuitive. You would think if something was typical, that's the thing you would see. But the word typical has a special meaning when you're talking about biology and the classification of organisms. Typical means it looks like the one that was originally described. And often that is the commonest one, but sometimes the one that was first described in the scientific literature was a less commonly seen. The word typical always means that slightly odd meaning, the form that was as described and not, as it would mean in normal English language, the commonest of them. One of slightly confusing terms when you first start looking at stuff like this, that you use words in a slightly different way to the way you would use them in common speech. And of course, that can then be a problem when you're talking to people who are not specialists and who expect words to mean what they mean when they're talking. This is rather active, so I'll listen in the pot specimen. some rather challenging internet issues on the mobile. Unfortunately, I haven't got on the gimbal or anything useful, and we'll try and have a look at a few of the moths using this device. A little bit annoying, and I'm seeing if I can get the proper connection back up, but for now we're going to go with this on the hope that it works. So this is a scan. Not sure where we've got to. I'm not sure what we're looking at. Okay, let's bring that on. Okay, let's take this off again and see if we're doing any better. So, trying to show these through the display here. So this, what else have we got from here? So this species, let me go back to trying to view it on the live view. This species is called a bee moth. That's going to be annoying. And this is a micro moth. It's one of the smaller moths, so it's one of the bigger smaller moths, which is perhaps not the helpful thing to say. And this species is a brood parasite of bumblebees. So the larva of this species is in the detritus and the material it's made of, but they will take bee larvae on occasion. So they can be a pest to the bumblebees. And that's its name, Aphomia sociala. Yeah, we've got a couple of them in the traps. That would be bee moth. What else will we look at? This really tiny one, I'm surprised this one is still alive actually, which I'll explain why I'm surprised by that in just a moment. But this really tiny one, which you can see is flapping around quite madly. I don't want to focus on the pot, I want to focus on the moth. This is a moth called the water veneer. It's been very active. But you can see there the scientific name, Acenteria ephemerella, and the last part of that name might give you a hint as to what this thing's life cycle is. So it does not tend to last very long as an adult. This is a species that will typically emerge fly around and live probably less than a day as an adult. This is likely to be a male. We've got thousands of, well, not thousands, hundreds of these in the trap last night. They come in large numbers. The females are two types of female in this species. Females that have wings and females that don't have wings. And they're rather odd in they have a semi-aquatic larva. Their caterpillars live in bits of pondweed spun together below the surface of the water. So they need to breathe air, so they come out. But usually they die sort of as soon as they go in the trap. You tend not to see them living. And then I think we'll finish on this moth because it doesn't look like the image quality is going to improve anytime soon. Come on, get down there. Let's see if we can get this in front of the camera. So this is a much larger moth, as you can see. I'm going to have to fight the focus a little bit. But this is a buff-tip moth. And this is a species that protects itself by being camouflaged and looking like a bit of twig. So it's a buff tip. So that was the last of the ones we're going to look at today. The buff tip, Phalaria bucephala. Rather an attractive moth and a good one to end the broadcast on. And with any luck, at least some of that will have come through, not such a poor quality that you'll be able to see something. But clearly having internet challenges here today, I'm getting told I have a very low signal. So we'll end there on the buff tip. But this was the last of the broadcasts for Moth Night. And just a way of encouraging people to think about some of the things that are in the world around them that maybe they don't always see. So thanks everyone.